In this section, we're going to create the camera script. We're going to start off creating a new script and attaching it to the player's camera. We're then going to add a shake function to the script for when the player is hit by an enemy. We're also going to create a function to reset the camera's position when in a boss battle. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's go ahead and get started creating the script. So let's go ahead and jump into the player node. Then we're going to select the camera 2D. We're going to add a script to the camera 2D node. Then we're going to make sure we're saving it in the scripts folder. Let's create that now. All right, let's start off with a couple variables. The first one is going to be an @export. We're going to call this variable shake underscore, and let's do amplitude. We're going to make this a type float and simply equal the default value to 10.0. We're also going to create another @export variable, and we're going to call this shake underscore duration. We're also going to give this a type of float and equal it to 0.2. Then we're going to create one more variable. This is going to be for the tween. This is basically going to give it that little animation to shake or change whatever we want to. Give it a type tween. All right, let's start off with the first function, and that's going to be our shake function. So all lowercase, shake, empty set of parentheses, and simply do an arrow to void. All right, now inside of this, we're going to do a couple things. First thing we're going to do is we're going to say if, and we're going to do if our tween equals true, which we leave blank, and our tween dot is running. So we don't want this to run, of course, multiple times. We only want it to run one time at a time. All right, then inside of it, we'll simply do a tween underscore, or better yet, dot kill, which will end the tween immediately. So basically, if we are running a tween and we try to run another one at that same time, it'll go ahead and immediately stop it. That's a little safety net. But if not, we'll go ahead, we're going to do tween equals create tween, because we're creating a new one. We're also then going to go ahead with that tween, do a dot, and we're going to set a transition, so set underscore trans, parenthesis symbol, capital tween, and we're going to go ahead, do dot, all caps, transition sign. There we go, make sure it's spelled correctly. Then do a dot set ease within there, tween, dot capital ease out. All right, and that's going to go ahead and start our little animation to move it outward. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this start underscore offset. And we're going to go ahead, give it a type of vector2 equals vector2 dot capital 0. Then below that, another one. We're going to go ahead, do end underscore offset. Simply go ahead, type vector2. This time, though, we're going to equal it to a vector2, but give it a set of parentheses, open them up. Inside of it, we're going to give it some random values, which we're going to use random f range for random float range, and then we're going to set it to a negative shake amplitude, comma, all the way up to just the regular shake amplitude. Now we need to give it two values because it's a vector2 for the x and y. So then for the next one, make sure you have a comma after it. We're going to do the same thing, rand f range, within the parentheses, negative shake amplitude, comma, shake amplitude. Nice. All right, now we just need to actually initiate it, which we can do simply by doing tween dot tween property. Within there, we'll go ahead, set it to self, comma, and then double quotes, offset, comma, end offset. Make sure you're still inside the parentheses though. End offset, comma, shake duration now, which is the length of how long we want it, and then just simply divide that by 2. Okay, nice. And we're going to go ahead, copy that same thing, paste it right below. This time we're going to go ahead and set the start offset, shake duration divided by 2. Perfect, and that'll go ahead and initiate the shake. And if you remember, inside the player script, we initiate that shake once we get hit by an enemy, which should be somewhere towards down here once we get into the getting hurt one. So look for enemy, boss fight, enemy, here we go. Player hit, once the player is hit, then it will go ahead and initiate that shake function. Let's go back to our camera, see what we got so far. Let's wrap this script up with one more function. This is the function that's going to update its position if we're in a boss battle. So let's go ahead and we're going to use one of our pre-built functions, our process function. So go ahead, add the process function there. Then inside of it, we're going to check a couple things. We have some global variables for whether or not we're inside a boss battle. So we're going to say if global dot is in boss battle. If that equals true, then what we're going to do is we're simply going to create variable boss underscore view, and then we need to get that view, which we can easily do by doing a get underscore tree, which is every node in the current game, and then we're going to do a dot get first node in group. So what this is going to do is basically go to our entire tree, which is over here, search through it, and get the first node with a specific group name, and I'm going to go ahead and look for the boss view. Now we don't have this created yet, but this is how we're going to get it once we do create it. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to set position smoothed enabled equal false, because again, if you remember, this current setting on our camera is making it follow the player. But when we're in a boss battle, we don't want that. We want it to basically stay in place. So we're setting it to false here. Then we're going to go ahead and set our global position of the camera equal to our boss view dot global position. Just like that. Nice. Now, of course, when it's over, we don't want this all to happen, so we also need to do it if global dot defeated boss equals true. If that's the case, then we're going to go ahead inside of it, set our global dot is in boss battle back to false, so the code above will not go into effect. Then we're going to go ahead, set the position, which is our current camera position, equal to back to where it is, which is at vector 2. And if yours is different than mine, then you can simply go ahead into the camera 2 inspector, locate its current set position, which for me is x value of -1, comma, and then a -99 for the y. Okay, if yours is different, then just match it up just like that. Once we have this though, we also want to go ahead, set our global dot is in boss battle, or we already did that. Whoops, we need to do boss defeated, because we're going to use that value later, boss defeated, and we're setting that to true. All right, oops, make sure it's set to true. And then we're also going to go ahead, we are going to set our position smoothing enabled back to true, which will of course make the camera re-follow the player. Make sure you have your colon there. Clean everything up here. And once we create one of our first enemies, we can test this out to make sure it's working. Let's save what we got so far though. Back to 2D view and back to level 1. Save what you got. In this section, we're going to create the spike enemy. We're going to start off and discuss the spike enemy being created. We're then going to create the spike enemy with a sprite and a collision shape. After that, we're going to create a simple script for the spike enemy to move back and forth. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. This here is going to resemble the spike enemy. Unlike the other enemies, the spike enemy is not going to be able to be defeated by the player. The spike enemy instead will be an obstacle the player must avoid. The one thing we will add to the spike enemy is its movement to move towards the endpoint that we set. Alright, let's go ahead and get started creating the spike enemy. So let's go ahead and start off adding a new node in our level 1, right click, add child node, and we're going to add simply a character body 2D. We're going to rename it, and we're going to rename it as spike enemy. We're then going to go ahead, select it. We're going to add a new enemy tag to it. If you don't already have the enemy one, simply go ahead, type it out, and hit create. I already have one, so I'm going to go ahead and just select the enemy, all lowercase. Now we're also going to go ahead and make sure we have the correct collision layering, because currently, if you open up collision, you're going to see it has layer 1 and layer 1 mask. And that's fine if you want the player not to be able to walk through the enemies, but I think it'll look a lot better if we can go ahead and have the player still get affected by the enemy, but be able to walk through them. So what I'm going to do is simply turn off 1 for each and set it for 2. Now one thing to remember though, if we want the enemies to still walk on the ground, we need to make sure that the ground has both 1 and 2 selected. So let's go ahead, we're going to go into the map, into tiles, select the ground one, go into the tile set, and then physics layers, make sure you have that, and go ahead and enable it both for 1 and 2 for each. And we need to do that for everything that the player might be in contact with, and of course the enemy. So we have it for the ground, but don't forget we also have these platforms here. So what we can do is go into the collisions, locate the two-way collisions, which should be, one-way static bodies. Just select it, go into the collisions, and simply enable it 2 for each as well. We got to do this for each level, so let's go ahead and do it real quick before we forget. Open up scenes, simply select level 2. Do the same thing here. Go ahead and navigate to map, open up tiles, select the ground one, and we're going to go ahead and enable it for 1 and 2. Don't forget you have to select it here. Make sure you have that there. And now let's go ahead for the platforms. We have a specific one as well, which is going to be the one-way static body. Go ahead, select that. Collisions, enable it for 1 and 2. All right. Let's go ahead, save that change. Let's do the final one for level 3. Open up the map, open up tiles, simply select the ground one, and go ahead, select the tile set and enable it for 1 and 2 for each. All right. Save those changes. Again, we could have done this later, but doing it now just so we don't forget down the road. Let's close out each one. All right, now let's continue on with the spike enemy. Go ahead, select the spike enemy, right click, add child node. Let's add a animated sprite 2D. Let's go ahead, give it a new animation. Now, because this enemy is only going to have one type of animation, I'm simply going to keep it as default, but enable the on ready play, okay? So when we turn on the game and this enemy's here, it'll always play this animation on start. Let's go ahead and give it now the animation sprites. I'm going to select the sprite sheet enemy's default size. Make sure it's sliced correctly. You can see it on the size over here. Just make sure it's 64 by 64. Then select the enemy sprites you want to use. Add the frames. Hit play to make sure it looks good. I like it. Let's increase the size a little bit though. So I'm going to select the animated sprite 2D. I'm going to go to transform. Simply increase the scale to 1.5 for both X and Y. I'm also just going to move it over a bit just for testing purposes right over here. All right. Now we can go ahead and give it its actual collision shape. So let's right click on spike enemy, add child node, select a collision shape. Let's give it a new shape, circle, and just make sure it is surrounding the enemy. Nice. All right. Now, of course, we just need one more node, which is the endpoint node. So We know it's going to start on the starting position, but we also want to give it an endpoint area. So let's right click on the spike enemy, use a simple node 2D, and we're going to rename this as endpoint capital P. And all I'm going to do is move that endpoint down a bit, right below it about here. Let's save what we got so far. Let's go ahead now and get started on the script. So let's go ahead and we're going to select the main node, spike enemy. Let's add a script. And we're going to keep the name as spike_enemy.gd. Make sure we're saving that in the correct location. Scripts folder, open, create. All right, so this is going to be a pretty simple script. All we want to do is just make the enemy go up and down, heading towards, of course, the endpoint. So let's go ahead, create an @export variable, call it start_position, and simply go ahead, equal that to a type of vector2. We're then going to go ahead, create another @export variable, end_position. Go ahead, make that a type vector2, another @export variable, speed, and then go ahead, make it a float, and simply set the default value to something like 100.0. Create another variable, and we're going to simply call this direction. And we're going to equal that to a int, a value of 1. And there we go. Those are our variables. Let's move on to our first function, which is simply going to be our ready function. So everything happening on start. First thing we're going to do is get that starting position. So do start position equal self dot global position. And you don't necessarily need the self. This just makes it easier to read. Next up, create our end position. Equal it to our current endpoint. So take that endpoint node, drag and drop it in. Do a dot global position. Next up, we're going to go ahead, drag and drop the animated sprite 2D, do a dot play, and simply play the default. Now, we know we already did this in the original here where we had that default, but this is just a reassurance. All right, now we just need the actual movement, which we're going to do in our physics process function, which we know is the best for moving actual nodes. So let's go ahead, underscore, physics process. Then we're going to go ahead, create a new variable, call it target underscore position, equal it simply to our end position, if direction equals value of 1, else start position. Now this is just a simple way to do a simple if-else statement. You don't necessarily have to have it as multiple lines. And because this is such a simple one, I'm going to keep it as one, just like that. We're also going to go ahead and create another variable. We're going to call this movement underscore vector. We're going to simply equal that to a parentheses set of our target position minus global position. Outside of the parentheses, simply do a dot normalized. And dot normalized is simply going to help it become a whole number. We're going to times that whole thing by the speed, okay? Then all we got to do is get the velocity. So do velocity equals our movement vector. All right, then as you remember, we just have to do that move and slide to actually give it the ability to move. Then the last thing we're going to do also is simply do an if statement for our global position dot distance 2, make sure it's distance 2, and then we're going to say our target position. If that is less than 5, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to change our direction. So direction times equals -1, which will simply flip it. Okay, perfect. Let's save that change. Let's go ahead back to 2D. Then we can go ahead and test it out. Start current scene, let that load, and we should now see our enemy moving. Okay, nice. And if we run into it, we should also get hurt by it. If we don't, that's okay. We'll fix that in just a second. To fix that issue, what we gotta do is simply go into the player node and then go into the areas of the player, select the hitbox, and as you can see in the collisions, we do not have that layer 2 and mask 2 selected. So make sure you have that selected though so we can get affected by things in those layers and masks. Let's save that change. Let's go back to level 1, start current scene. Let's go ahead, and now looks like we get hit by the enemy. Let's make sure that everything looks good once it's game over. Now one thing, as you can tell, we are still seeing the enemies, which is not good. We want to be able to not see the enemies. So what we can do to fix that also is back in the player, simply just select the main player node, and we're just going to increase the Z value, all right? Which basically will put it in front of other things. So let's go to the visibility on the main player node, then ordering, and then as you can see, Z index is set to 0. Let's just increase that to something a little higher, like 5. Save that change, close things up, go back to level 1, start current scene again, go all the way until you get a game over, and we should see the screen and the player are now in front of everything. Perfect. Let's close that out. Let's go ahead, select our spike enemy, make this its own scene, say branch as scene, and I'm going to put this in the components folder. Save that there. Let's go ahead, save the change, remove the enemy now in here. We'll put the enemies in once we go ahead and design the level. Let's close out here, save what you got, and we're looking good.